had imagined my wedding day hundreds of times. A day filled with happiness, where I would walk down the aisle with a radiant smile beside the man I loved. But no one could have predicted that, in just one evening, all those dreams would shatter in the most brutal way. That day, I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost my faith in love, in the promises I once believed in. If someone had told me that this wedding would become a nightmare, etched into my memory forever, I would have never believed them. But reality is always more ruthless than any nightmare. The wedding was held at a luxurious hotel in San Francisco, a place Lucas and I had carefully chosen after months of planning. Everything was perfect, from the fresh flowers elegantly arranged across the hall to the soft piano music filling the warm and welcoming space. Family and friends from all over had gathered to witness this special moment, their faces glowing with joy. I remember the feeling of slipping into my pristine white wedding dress, my heart brimming with happiness and anticipation. I thought to myself, this is a moment I will cherish forever, the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in my life. Lucas, my fiancé, was a 35-year-old man, mature, successful, and seemingly perfect. I fell in love with him for his tenderness, his charming appearance, and the sweet promises he made about our future. He always told me I was the woman he wanted to spend his life with, that I was the missing piece to complete him. His words made me trust him completely, made me believe I had found true love. But what I didn't know was that behind his flawless exterior, there were things I had never truly seen. Mrs. Helen Ubia's mother was an elegant woman in her 60s, with a calm yet commanding presence. From the very first time we met, I could sense a cold distance from her. She never openly welcomed me as her future daughter-in-law, but I reassured myself that maybe she just needed time to accept me. I did everything I could to please her, to prove that I was worthy of her son. But on my wedding day, I finally realized that all my efforts had been in vain. That day I had no idea that in just a few hours everything would change forever. I had no idea that what was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life would turn into my deepest pain. And I had no idea that after that day, I would no longer be the same person I once was. The wedding reception took place in a breathtakingly beautiful setting. The grand chandeliers reflected warm golden light onto the meticulously decorated tables adorned with white and blue roses, the colors I had carefully chosen from the very beginning. Gentle music played in the background, mingling with the cheerful laughter and conversations filling the hall. I looked around, catching glimpses of familiar faces, family and friends raising their glasses in celebration. In that moment, I told myself that perhaps I had been worrying too much. Even though Mrs. Helen didn't seem entirely pleased with this marriage, I hoped that today, at least, she would put aside her reservations and share in her son's happiness. But I was wrong. As I was chatting with an old friend, a firm voice rang out behind me, making me freeze in place. "Ava, I need to speak with you." I turned around, locking eyes with Mrs. Helen's cold stare. Dressed in a deep burgundy evening gown, she stood there with her usual stern demeanor. She didn't wait for me to respond, merely gesturing toward a secluded corner of the reception hall. My heart tightened, but I followed, reassuring myself that she probably just wanted to exchange a few private words. But the moment we reached the corner, her voice dropped, thick with anger. "Do you think you can humiliate me on my son's wedding day?" I was stunned. I don't understand what you mean, ma'am." She curled her lips into a smirk, her eyes glinting with disdain. "You know exactly what you did. You have shown me no respect. Throughout the entire ceremony, you never once checked on me, never once acknowledged that I am a part of this family." My mouth fell open. The accusation was so absurd that I had no idea how to respond. "It was never my intention. I've done everything I could to make you happy. I truly—" "Spare me the act, Ava," she snapped, her voice sharp as ice. "You are a disgrace to this family." I took a step back, my heart pounding against my chest. Why was she doing this? On my wedding day, of all days? I glanced around the room, hoping to spot Lucas, praying that he would come over and help me clear up whatever misunderstanding this was. And then, as if my prayers had been answered, Lucas appeared. He stepped closer, his gaze shifting between his mother and me. "What's going on here?" Mrs. Helen let out a deep sigh, the kind that dripped with disappointment, as if she were the real victim in all of this. "Lucas, sweetheart, Ava has been incredibly disrespectful to me all evening. I have tried to be patient, but she has shown no regard for my feelings or anyone else in the family. I widened my eyes looking at Lucas, silently pleading for him to defend me. But his expression slowly shifted. No longer the warm, reassuring look I was used to, but one filled with doubt and irritation. "Ava, is this true?" My throat tightened. "Lucas, you know I would never do that. This is a misunderstanding." He crossed his arms, his eyes darkening. "I can't believe this. You really embarrassed my mother on our wedding day?" I froze. This wasn't the man I had fallen in love with. This wasn't the man who had promised to protect me, who had once told me I was his whole world. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him out of whatever spell he was under. But before I could say another word, his voice cut through the air, colder than ever. "Ava, you humiliated my mother in front of everyone. Do you think I can just accept that?" Everything happened too fast. I barely registered the rush of air before a sharp sound echoed through the room. Silence fell instantly. I stood there, stunned. My cheek burned, but the pain was nothing compared to the numbness spreading through my chest. Lucas had just slapped me. Right in front of everyone. No one spoke, no one moved. I could feel their eyes on me. Pity, shocked, horrified, but no one stepped in. There was only silence, suffocating me in my deepest humiliation. I turned to Lucas, searching his face for something, remorse, sympathy, anything. But all I saw was cold, unrelenting anger. "You don't deserve to be my wife," he spat, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are a disgrace." I heard someone gasp, someone whispering in the crowd, but I didn't care anymore. Because in that moment, I finally understood. That slap wasn't just a moment of rage. It was a warning of something far worse, a sign that I had just stepped into a relationship beyond saving. And if I didn't leave soon, I would lose myself completely. But I didn't yet know that this slap was only the beginning of a nightmare far worse than I could have imagined. I sat in my empty apartment, the dim glow of the streetlights casting pale shadows across the walls. After Lucas's slap and the humiliation of my wedding day, I had walked out of that reception without looking back. I left behind the extravagant wedding gown, the whispers of the guests, and the man I had once believed would protect me. In the days that followed, I felt like I was drifting in a fog. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I just lay there, replaying the moment over and over in my head. Lucas, the man I had loved, had humiliated me in front of hundreds of people, with the silent approval of his mother. But as the pain began to dull, I came to a realization. If I didn't stand up for myself, I would remain a victim in this story, and that was something I refused to accept. I needed proof. I needed to expose the true nature of Lucas and his mother, not just to reclaim my dignity, but to ensure they could no longer manipulate and hurt others. But I couldn't do it alone. I turned to Robert Hayes, a well-known private investigator specializing in financial fraud and domestic abuse cases. Our first meeting took place in a small cafe, where I sat with a cup of cold tea, my fingers gripping the mug as if it were the only thing holding me together. Robert Hayes, a man in his early 40s with graying hair and sharp, perceptive eyes, listened to my story without interruption. When I finished, he slowly set his notebook down on the table and looked at me. "Ms. Ava, are you ready to see this through to the end?" I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I don't have a choice." And so our plan began. I started secretly recording every conversation with Lucas and Mrs. Helen. I hid a small recording device in my handbag, quietly capturing every insult, every moment of manipulation and degradation. It didn't take long for me to realize that their abuse went beyond cruel words. It was an entire pattern of psychological control that I had failed to recognize before. Lucas didn't just belittle me. He deliberately made me feel worthless. He controlled my finances, insisting that I hand over all my earnings so he could manage them better. Helen, with her polished, sophisticated demeanor, constantly planted seeds of self-doubt in my mind, telling me I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve Lucas, that I was nothing but a burden to their family. But what sent a true chill down my spine was Robert Hayes' discovery. One morning I received a call from him. "We have a much bigger problem, Ava." Robert's voice was low, serious. "I've been looking into Lucas and his mother's finances, and I think they're doing something illegal." I froze. "What do you mean?" "They've been moving large sums of money between different accounts, Some of that money is coming from Lucas's clients. My heart pounded. Lucas was a financial advisor, and if he was using client funds for personal gain or engaging in fraudulent activities, he could be facing criminal charges. Robert continued. I've found suspicious transactions. It looks like they're laundering money or committing some kind of financial fraud. I need more time to confirm everything, but if my suspicions are correct, then Lucas and his mother aren't just emotional abusers. They're criminals. I sat there, feeling as if the world was spinning around me. I had thought Lucas was just a controlling man, a manipulative narcissist. But now I realized he was far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. They weren't just hurting me, they were manipulating and exploiting countless others. And I knew I had to bring this to light. I gripped my phone tightly. Robert, we keep going. I need to know everything. Because this was no longer just about me and Lucas. This was the truth that needed to be exposed, and I wasn't going to stop until everything was brought to justice. I sat in my small apartment, the glow of my desk lamp illuminating stacks of documents and recording devices scattered across the table. The evidence Robert and I had gathered was starting to form a complete picture. A picture of manipulation, abuse, and financial fraud that Lucas and his mother had hidden for years. But collecting proof was only the first step. I needed a plan. A perfect plan to expose them for who they truly were. I couldn't do this alone. I picked up the phone and called Anna, my best friend since college. Anna was sharp, intelligent, and above all fiercely loyal. When I told her everything, she sat in stunned silence for a few seconds before clenching her jaw in anger. Ava, you can't let them get away with this. I know. I looked at her, my gaze unwavering. And I won't let that happen. We spent the entire night organizing all the evidence. Recordings of Lucas and his mother's emotional abuse, their condescending, controlling, and degrading conversations. The financial documents from Robert, proving the suspicious transactions and large sums of money being moved between anonymous accounts. After hours of going through everything, Anna set her pen down on the table, leaned back in her chair, and looked at me. Oh, what's your plan? I took a deep breath, my eyes scanning the pile of documents in front of me. I'm going to throw an event. A big party. Anna raised an eyebrow. A party? Ava, you're not planning some cheap revenge stunt, are you? I shook my head. No. This isn't revenge. This is justice. I continued explaining. I'm going to host a lavish event and invite everyone who knows Lucas, his family, friends, colleagues, and most importantly, the media. I want all of them to witness the truth about him and his mother. Anna remained silent for a moment before a small smile crossed her lips. I like this plan. 3 weeks later, everything was perfectly arranged. The party was set to take place at an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city. I sent out invitations to everyone in Lucas's circle. His friends, business associates, even his family. I also reached out to several journalists from major financial publications to ensure this event would not be easily buried. Lucas, of course, had no idea what was coming. When he received the invitation, he only sent a short, smug text. Finally ready to make amends? Good. At least you have some dignity left. I read his message and felt nothing. No anger, no pain. Just anticipation. The night before the event, Anna stood beside me, her expression tinged with concern. Are you sure you want to do this? I looked at her, feeling an unfamiliar sense of calm settle within me. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Tomorrow, everything would be exposed. The party unfolded exactly as planned. The upscale restaurant in the heart of the city shimmered under the warm glow of chandeliers, with pristine white tablecloths draped over neatly arranged tables. Guests filled the venue, family, friends, and business associates of Lucas, all gathered in anticipation. The media was also present, with journalists from major financial publications mingling among the crowd, taking notes and engaging in quiet conversations with the attendees. I wore an elegant black evening gown, my hair swept into a sleek bun, and stepped into the center of the room with unwavering confidence. Tonight I was no longer the humiliated woman from my wedding day. Tonight, I was the one who held the truth. Lucas and Mrs. Helen arrived right on time, just as I had expected. Lucas, dressed in a sharp black suit, wore his usual smug smile, striding into the room as if this event was meant to celebrate him. Mrs. Helen clutched his arm, radiating the same air of superiority, convinced that tonight would be yet another display of their wealth and influence. They had no idea they were about to fall from grace. The event began like any other grand gathering. Soft murmurs of conversation, bursts of laughter, the clinking of glasses toasting in the air. I played the role of the perfect hostess, greeting guests, exchanging pleasantries with journalists, before finally stepping onto the stage, microphone in hand, commanding the attention of the entire room. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice calm but firm. "This event is not just a celebration, it is a reminder of the truth." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. I caught Lucas furrowing his brows, glancing at his mother. Mrs. Helen remained poised, but I noticed her fingers tightening around the stem of her wine glass. I continued. "I once believed in a beautiful love. I once believed Lucas was the perfect man, and that his family was a model of respectability. But tonight, I will show you who they truly are." With the press of a button on the remote in my hand, I turned my gaze to the large screen behind me. The lights dimmed, and the video began to play. The first thing to echo through the room was a voice recording. Lucas's voice rang out, cold and full of disdain. "Love? Do you even know what love is? You're lucky to be here. You should be grateful that I've tolerated you for this long." Another recording followed. "Mom was right. You don't deserve to be my wife." Then came Mrs. Helen's voice. "A woman like her is no loss. You can find someone else, someone who knows how to listen." The room fell into a deafening silence. The murmurs from earlier had vanished, replaced by stunned expressions and even outrage. A few guests covered their mouths in shock, unable to believe what they had just heard. But I didn't stop there. The screen shifted to a series of financial documents. Suspicious transactions, irregular figures, undeniable proof that Lucas and his mother had embezzled money from their clients. I turned to the crowd. Lucas is not just an abuser. He is a fraud. Along with his mother, they have stolen from their clients, using their money for personal gain, manipulating and deceiving those who trusted them. Lucas shot up from his seat, his face drained of color, but he tried to keep his composure. "Turn this off now," he shouted, but no one in the room was listening to him anymore. Mrs. Helen stood up as well, her voice sharp with anger. "What do you think you're doing, Ava?" I met her gaze, unwavering. "I'm showing everyone the truth." Journalists had already begun taking notes, and some had raised their cameras to record the entire scene. Lucas tried to speak, but his desperate attempts to explain were drowned out by the furious whispers and murmurs of the crowd. The reputation that Lucas and his mother had built for years crumbled before their very eyes. I placed the microphone down and stepped off the stage as Lucas and Mrs. Helen struggled to withstand the storm of outrage crashing down on them. But there was no escape. Tonight, the truth had come to light, and I, the woman who was once their victim, had taken back control of my life. In the days following the event, the backlash spread like wildfire. The media covered the scandal extensively, exposing the evidence I had revealed. Major financial newspapers published detailed reports on the suspicious transactions in Lucas's firm, uncovering years of fraudulent activities orchestrated by him and his mother. Social media exploded with discussions about the scandal, with people relentlessly condemning Lucas and Mrs. Helen. Lucas, of course, tried to defend himself. He appeared on a local financial news channel, desperately trying to deny all allegations, calling the evidence I had presented fabricated and a conspiracy to ruin his reputation. But the recordings and financial documents were undeniable. Things quickly spiraled out of his control. Less than a week later, federal financial investigators stepped in. Government auditors combed through every account linked to Lucas and his mother. Untraceable funds, fraudulent contracts, and clear documentation of client embezzlement. All of it was laid bare. Lucas was summoned for questioning, and this time, there was no escape behind his lies. I remember the exact moment I received a call from my attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rachel Carter. Her voice was firm and confident as she said, "Ava, we have an airtight case. Lucas has no way out." I closed my eyes and exhaled in relief. The legal battle began soon after. The lawsuit was officially filed in federal court. I had worked closely with Rachel to prepare meticulously, compiling all the critical evidence, from the audio recordings to the financial reports that private investigator Robert Hayes had uncovered. On the first day of trial, I walked into the courtroom with a sense of calm I hadn't expected. Lucas sat at the defendant's table looking noticeably worn down. He wore a dark suit, trying to maintain an air of confidence, but I noticed how tightly his hands were clenched, his knuckles white. Mrs. Helen sat beside him, her piercing eyes filled with seething hatred as she glared at me. But this time, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. The prosecution laid out a damning case. Reports from financial investigators, testimony from defrauded clients, and most importantly, the recordings of Lucas and his mother discussing their illegal financial transfers. Piece by piece, the case built itself, exposing the full extent of their crimes. Rachel stepped forward, fixing her gaze on Lucas. "Mr. Lucas, can you explain why your personal account received over $500,000 from client investments without any legal documentation?" Lucas swallowed hard, struggling to find a response. I wasn't aware of those transactions." Rachel didn't give him a chance to evade. "Then what about this recording? In it you told your mother, 'Don't worry, the money won't be detected.' How do you explain that?" The courtroom fell into complete silence. Lucas lowered his head, unable to refute the evidence. The trial lasted for weeks, but the outcome had been clear from the very beginning. Finally, the judge delivered the verdict. Lucas was found guilty of financial fraud and abusing the trust of his clients. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to repay the stolen funds. Mrs. Helen, while not facing jail time, was fined a substantial amount and lost all her credibility in the business world. I sat there quietly listening as the verdict was read. There was no sense of triumph, no joy in winning, only a deep sense of peace. I had secured justice for myself. As the trial concluded, I stepped outside and took a deep breath. The warm sunlight touched my face, washing away the darkness of the past. But I knew there was still one last thing I needed to do. I had to free myself from this toxic marriage. A week after the trial, I sat in my lawyer's office, silently signing the divorce papers. With the final stroke of my pen, I closed the most painful chapter of my life. I was no longer Lucas's wife, no longer trapped under his or his mother's control. I was free. I left the city that had witnessed my darkest days and moved to a quiet suburb near Austin, Texas. My new home wasn't large, but it was cozy. A small wooden house nestled among lush green trees, far from the noise and chaos of the city. From my porch I could see rolling hills stretching out to the horizon, where the sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange every evening. Here, I could breathe in the crisp, clean air, listen to the birds sing in the morning and, most importantly, I could finally feel truly free. Looking back on my journey, I realized I had changed, more than I ever thought possible. I was no longer the fragile girl who was easily manipulated by Lucas and his mother's toxic words. I was no longer afraid or doubtful of myself. I had stood up, exposed those who had hurt me, and most importantly, I had taken back control of my life. Anna had been a tremendous support throughout this entire journey. She visited me during my first week after moving, bringing a bottle of wine and her bright, familiar smile. We sat on the porch, sipping our drinks, quietly soaking in the peaceful surroundings. "You did it, Ava," Anna said, her eyes filled with pride. "You fought until the end and took everything back." I smiled softly, gazing at the swirling wine in my glass. "I couldn't have done it without you and Robert Hayes." Anna shook her head. "We only helped you gather the evidence. But standing up, facing the truth, that was all you. You're so much stronger than you think, Ava." I fell silent. The memories of the trial, the courtroom, the stunned and defeated expressions on Lucas and Mrs. Helen's faces as they were exposed, it all played vividly in my mind. I had once thought I would feel a sense of satisfaction watching them fall, but instead, all I felt was peace. I never needed revenge. I only needed justice. And I had won that. After leaving Austin, I decided that I wouldn't just move on from my past, I would use it as fuel to help other women who had been trapped in the same kind of toxic relationships. I reached out to a nonprofit organization that supports victims of domestic abuse and psychological manipulation. I started attending counseling sessions, sharing my story with women struggling to break free from their own toxic situations. I saw myself in them, the sadness in their eyes, the weight of fear and self-doubt on their shoulders. And I told them, if I could do it, so can you. Robert Hayes also contacted me after the trial had ended. What's next for you, Ava? He asked over the phone. I took a deep breath, looking out at the endless blue sky beyond my window. Living a life that truly belongs to me. Because after everything, I hadn't just survived the pain. I had turned it into my strength to fight back. My story wasn't just about seeking justice for myself. It was proof that even in the darkest times, we have the power to rise and reclaim our lives. I was once a victim, but now I am myself, strong, independent, and free. Ava's story is not just a journey of overcoming pain, but a testament to the power of resilience and courage. In life, many people find themselves trapped in toxic relationships, controlled and hurt, yet too afraid to speak out. But Ava chose to fight, not only to reclaim justice for herself, but to expose the truth and protect others who might become the next victims. She refused to let her past define her, and instead turned it into the driving force to build a new life, one of freedom and strength, like never before. Ava's story is an emotional journey of betrayal, justice, and rebirth. What do you think about her decision? If you were in her shoes, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more compelling stories about life and family.